Hello, this is Angela from Advice Resolutions. I wanted to have a discussion with you listening about the judicial landscape, the law that makes us act in particular ways, whether we decide to comply with the law or decide not to comply with the law. And I am talking about everybody, including the lawmakers, the law enforcement, and individual civilians. But what happens if a person does break the law? Do you think that you're going to get justice? Do you think that you're going to go before a judge that's reasonable, honest, has integrity, isn't racist, isn't discriminatory, isn't a misogynist? Those are all the questions I think might be in the forefront of your mind, because it certainly is in the forefront of my mind. So take, for example, judges that act with over judicious conduct. And I mean to say that they do things in their role that isn't even legal, that is in fact illegal. So let's say a cohort of people, a number of people statistically, are affected by the way judges make their judgments, their orders, their arrest warrants in particular. Now let's look at judgments. You'd expect judgments to be written fairly once the trial is finished, whether it's a civil trial or whether it's a criminal trial. And then everything in the judgment or the order would be true, because judges are supposed to be honest people. They are like the man, as we say, on the Clapham omnibus. You'd expect them to be honest and have integrity and not to make any mistakes because they're judges. You put your belief in judges, but can you really trust judges? Can they make mistakes? Are they human? What are their values? Are they conservative? Would they decide against you on a whim just because of the colour of your skin, because you're a woman and you're expected to behave yourself? Well, those are the questions that go before people's minds, whether you're a woman, whether you're a person of colour, even in particular, because remember that people of colour in particular are over-criminalised in the judicial system. So if we're talking about judgments and orders or arrest warrants that are falsely produced or over-judicious conduct, it's going to be, let's face it, a person of colour who's going to be adversely affected. I mean, can we ever say that a judge has never, ever, ever written out an arrest warrant that's not true? Because let's think about this. You know, judges can do bad things just like people who aren't judges. But we do expect judges not to do bad things because we're trusting in them to have professionalism and skill and competency to decide, because we leave it in their capable hands, don't we? But whose capable hands are we leaving this decision of our fate in? You know, we say that, people should produce clean hands. They should walk with clean hands, talk with clean hands. But that necessarily is not the case, because the judicial system can also be crooked. It can be criminal. And it depends on the culture of the judicial process, whether or not judges will be falsely producing documents, although we think that they sign a statement of truth, they've entered the profession. The issue is that judges are seen as trustworthy and knowledgeable, and they've decided that how the law is critically analysed by them. But is it truthfully analysed by them? Can we ever say that a judge has never written out a false witness statement, a false document, a false judgment, a false order, a false arrest warrant? Because judges can. And we know that they can, But what happens when a judge makes a false order? Can you go to prison? Well, you must have to go to prison because the judge is believed. What if the judge writes out a false arrest warrant? Would you be arrested? How could you prove that you didn't commit the crime when the judge is believed because he's written out the warrant and he knows best, she knows best? Can you actually defend yourself? What if the system you're relying on to defend you is also criminal and crooked and dishonest? Because that's also possible. What if you try to get a defense from a defense lawyer who's also in the system, who also abides by what the judge wants to do? That's bad. That's criminal. And then you don't stand a chance. Remember that we're living in a society where anyone is prepared to break the law, even the judge. Even a judge is prepared to write out false orders, false warrants, false judgments that bear no resemblance to the truth, and they're behind it. So they are, in fact, behind a breach of the liberty of the person who is subject to the criminal issues that they themselves can't understand how they arrived in that situation. Judges, sometimes, not all, can't be trusted. Judges should be held to account, and judges should also be made to recuse themselves when they have an interest in their own cause. You have heard that judges can have an interest in their own cause, an unhealthy interest as well at that, because they could actually have financial interests. They could have interests that are racist, interests that are misogyny, interests that go far beyond anything that any of us will ever be able to understand. So don't trust in judges. Trust in yourself and what you know and what you can learn and what you can understand and what you can make of the criminal justice system. Because once you're in the criminal justice system, it's difficult, not impossible, but it's difficult to navigate. And the system is against you. What about legal aid? Well, what legal aid? Can you get legal aid? Well, you probably can, but it might be very, very difficult to actually secure legal aid because legal aid is so restricted, and it's difficult to get someone to take your case, particularly if you change lawyers, if you fall out with your lawyer, you try to get a new lawyer, and then another lawyer doesn't want to take your case. I think you've probably heard all of this before. You've been there, you've seen it, you've done it. So what's happening here? The criminal justice system must be broken. It's broken through its tradition of judges being dishonest and crooked and criminal. It's broken because the system administratively doesn't even work, because people get let down. Barristers don't earn enough money. Solicitors don't earn enough money. So where do we go from here? What's going to happen? Do we get left in a mire of a mess, of disarray? So just hope and pray that if anything happens to you, it's not a fake order, a fake warrant, because judges do write fake orders, they do write fake warrants, and their behaviour is atrocious and abysmal and abhorrent, and you don't want to face that. So what can we do? We need to be able to sack judges. But can we sack judges? I don't think we can easily sack judges because, again, the belief system is that the judge is the honest person, the man on the Clapham omnibus, they don't do anything wrong, and because they've learnt their craft, their trade, they've been to university, and they've got the stripes, they must be right. But no, don't trust in them having all of those stars and stripes to their name, because judges can be dishonest. They could write fake orders, they could write fake documents, they could write fake, warrants for your arrest, because it must happen, and it does happen. We've seen it in the newspaper. We've seen it from individual cases. Trust in yourself. Find a good lawyer. Find a good way out of this mire, this mess of the criminal justice system, because the system will find you. And its intention is to break people. Trust me, to break you so badly you can't get back up. But just remember this, you have to have faith. You've got to make judges be accountable. Fight for your rights. You've got human rights. Make sure judges don't hear your case if they've got any form of interest. Make sure judges are held to account, make sure they do witness statements to prove that they are, in fact, being honest. If they don't do a witness statement, if no judge wants to do a witness statement, you have to think, well, are they being dishonest? Are they avoiding the truth? Are they criminal? Think about it. Judges should be honest, they should be upfront and transparent, but when they're not, and you can't see that they're being honest because they're refusing to write out a witness statement when they're required to do so, in any case, you have to question your your belief in the system, and you have to question the judge's integrity. So remember, look after yourself, read up on the law, do what you can to defend yourself, but most of all, stay well and be careful out there.